Hi, enjoy listening. On a bright Friday morning, the late summer sun poured golden light over the streets of Brookdale, a mid-sized New England town known for its brick-lined sidewalks and upscale dining scene. Inside his dark leather-trimmed BMW, Daniel Merrick adjusted his tie in the rearview mirror, flashing the satisfied grin of a man who had made it. At just 36, he was already the proud owner of Merrick's, one of the most talked-about restaurants in the county. Daniel had worked hard for this. At least that's what he liked to tell people. There had been years of hustling, flipping small properties, investing in a chain of coffee shops, making friends with the right investors, until he could finally buy the corner property on Main Street and turn it into his dream establishment. He'd spent nearly a year renovating it, bringing in a French-trained chef, and curating a menu that could impress even the city folk who took weekend trips out from Boston. For the past month, business had been booming, and Daniel was savouring his role as a respected businessman. As he steered into his private parking space behind the restaurant, Daniel took one last moment to admire the way the sunlight glinted off the glass facade. This was his kingdom, the place where he was king. Inside, the prep staff was already at work. The smell of baking bread mixed with the faint citrus scent from the morning's cleaning supplies. Daniel greeted his floor manager, Paula Evans, with a brief nod. He liked Paula. She kept things running smoothly. But he had little patience for small talk this early in the day. He was here for business, and, if he was being honest, for a bit of pleasure. Because there was one person in his restaurant who had caught his attention in a way that was almost distracting. Her name was Claire Whitmore. Daniel first noticed her 3 weeks ago, hunched over a sink in the cramped dishwashing station. She wasn't part of the glamorous front-of-house crew, but she didn't blend into the background either. Something about her, the serious focus in her eyes, the way she kept her head down but moved quickly and with quiet efficiency, intrigued him. She was younger, maybe 20 or 21, and she had that rare kind of beauty that didn't need makeup or fancy clothes. She didn't flirt with the waiters, didn't gossip in the break room, and certainly didn't seek out his attention, which of course made Daniel want her even more. Paula, leading him through the kitchen to review inventory notes, slowed her pace as they neared the dishwashing station. "And this is Claire," she said, gesturing toward the young woman, rinsing a stack of heavy ceramic plates. "She's only been here a couple of months, but she's reliable, quiet, no trouble." Daniel barely heard the rest. Claire looked up briefly, offering a polite smile before returning to her work. Something flickered in his chest, part curiosity, part challenge. Her story, he'd later overhear, was simple and sad. She'd grown up here in Brookdale, lost both her parents in a car accident just weeks before her high school graduation, and had been on her own ever since. College had been the dream, nursing school specifically, but reality had slammed that door shut. Without savings or family, she'd taken whatever jobs she could find, starting with a stint at a grocery store, then a laundry service, and now here, scrubbing plates in the back of Merrick's. Daniel thought it was a waste, A girl like that could be living differently, easier. He'd seen women half as pretty and twice as manipulative use their looks to get ahead. But Claire didn't seem interested in that game. She wore plain clothes, kept her hair pulled back, and left as he told himself he was just being generous when he decided he'd help her out. After all, he was the boss. And what good was being the boss if you couldn't bend the rules for someone who caught your eye? That afternoon, after lunch service had wound down, Daniel asked Paula to send Claire to his office. He leaned back in the black leather chair, glanced at the plush love seat in the corner, and smiled. The stage was set. When Claire appeared in the doorway, she hesitated, her hands nervously folded in front of her apron. "Mr. Merrick, Paula said you wanted to see me." "Come in, Claire. Sit down," Daniel said smoothly, gesturing to the love seat. "You've been doing a great job here. I like employees who show initiative." "Thank you," she replied quietly, still standing. "I was thinking," he continued, "we should have dinner sometime. Here, my treat. It's not every day someone like you gets the chance to enjoy the food without having to clean up after it." Her eyes flickered with discomfort. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested, Mr. Merrick. I'm seeing someone." Daniel chuckled, leaning forward. "Someone? That's cute. Look, Claire, I'm offering you an opportunity. I could make things a lot easier for you. Better pay, better hours. You could have options." "I'm fine with things the way they are," she said, her voice firmer now. Something in his smile hardened. "You might want to think about that answer. Around here, I decide who stays and who goes." The unspoken threat hung in the air. Claire simply nodded once, then turned and left, her footsteps quick against the tile floor. Daniel sat back, irritation prickling at his skin. She'd either come around, or she'd learn what it meant to cross him. By the time Claire stepped off the bus that evening, the August heat had given way to the first cool hints of autumn. The sky had turned a pale lavender, and the street lamps along Birch Street flickered to life. Her shift at Merrick's had been long, her hands raw from the hot dishwater, but at least she was heading home. To the little one-bedroom apartment she rented above a laundromat on the quiet side of town. Home, for Claire, was less about comfort and more about safety. The place was sparsely furnished, a second-hand couch, a chipped coffee table, a twin bed she'd hauled up the narrow stairs herself. Every month was a balancing act between rent, utilities, and groceries. There wasn't much left over. Sometimes there was nothing left over. She passed by St. Luke's Church on her walk from the bus stop. The old stone building, with its arched windows and weathered wooden doors, had been a part of her life since childhood. She hadn't attended services regularly since her parents died, but on quiet evenings she often slipped inside to light a candle and sit for a while in the stillness. That night, though, she didn't go in, not until she noticed someone sitting on the church steps. It was an older man, maybe in his mid-60s, wearing a threadbare brown coat that was a size too big. His hair was silver and unkempt, his cheeks weathered. He was hunched slightly, as if the weight of the world pressed down on his shoulders. In front of him, a paper coffee cup sat on the ground, holding only a few coins. As she approached, the man lifted his head and gave her a small, almost embarrassed smile. "Evening, miss," he said, his voice gravelly. "Don't suppose you have any bread to spare?" Claire hesitated. She'd seen him before, maybe twice in the past week, always in the same spot. Something about him didn't fit the usual image of the people who sometimes camped near the church. His eyes were sharp, alert, and there was a dignity in the way he carried himself, even while asking for food. "I don't have bread," she replied, "but there's a diner 2 blocks over. I can get you something warm." He seemed ready to protest, but his hunger betrayed him. If it's not too much trouble. It wasn't. 15 minutes later, she returned with a takeout container of scrambled eggs, toast, and sausage. She handed it over, expecting him to eat right there, but instead he carefully set it beside him. "You should eat it while it's hot," she said. "I will, but first I should thank you properly." He extended a hand. "Name's Walter Kane." "Claire Whitmore." She shook his hand, noting the surprising strength in his grip. Walter looked at her for a moment, as if searching for something in her face. Then he nodded. "Haven't been in Brookdale in years. Can't quite remember why I came back this week, but here I am." That caught her attention. "You don't remember?" He tapped the side of his head. "Been having some trouble. Doctors call it memory loss. I call it a bad trick life's playing on me." She didn't press for details. It wasn't her place. But when she turned to leave, something made her pause. "Do you have somewhere to sleep tonight?" Walter chuckled without humour. "Right here, unless the rain decides to move me along." Claire chewed her lip. It was reckless, she knew that, but loneliness and instinct overruled caution. "I have a couch," she said. "It's not much, but it's warmer than these steps." He blinked at her, surprised. "You don't even know me." "I know you need a place. That's enough." Walter studied her for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "All right, Miss Whitmore, if you're sure." That night, after they climbed the stairs to her small apartment, Walter sat at her kitchen table with the takeout she'd brought him. Claire brewed tea and listened as he spoke in fragments about train stations, a house he used to live in somewhere near here, and a son he hadn't seen in years. There were gaps, sudden stops in the middle of sentences when his brow would furrow, as if he'd lost his place in the story. But there was kindness in him, and a quiet gratitude that made her feel strangely protective of this man she'd just met. She didn't know then that offering him a couch for the night would set in motion a chain of events that would change both their lives, and that Walter Kane's past was tangled with people she already knew. The lunch rush that Tuesday started like any other. Plates of grilled salmon, artisan flatbreads, and roasted chicken breast slid from the pass to the servers, who bustled through the dining room with practiced efficiency. From her corner in the dish station, Claire worked steadily, rinsing plates and sliding them into the industrial washer, her apron already flecked with water and soap. She was halfway through scrubbing a stock pot when she felt a shift in the room's energy. Conversations among the line cooks quieted. The clink of silverware stopped. Then she heard Daniel's voice, sharp and deliberately loud. "Paula," he called from the kitchen doorway, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on Claire. "Let's deal with that dishwasher problem today." Claire froze. She could feel the heat rising in her face. Daniel strode into the kitchen, a forced smile on his lips. "Do you know what happened this afternoon?" he said, addressing the room but keeping his gaze locked on her. "One of my best customers, a personal friend, finds dried food on his plate in my restaurant. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is?" Claire swallowed. "That plate didn't come from me." "Don't interrupt," he snapped, the smile gone now. "If that had been the mayor or a food critic, we'd be looking at headlines tomorrow. We can't afford mistakes like that. Paula, have her paperwork ready. She's done here." The words hung in the air like a gavel strike. Claire looked toward Paula, who stood rooted near the prep counter, her expression caught between sympathy and helplessness. Everyone knew this wasn't about a dirty plate, but no one spoke up. Not here, not with Daniel watching. Claire's throat tightened, but she refused to give him the satisfaction of tears. She untied her apron, folded it neatly, and set it on the counter. Without another word, she walked past him and out the back door into the crisp afternoon air. That evening, she climbed the stairs to her apartment with her tote bag slung over one shoulder, her feet dragging. She expected Walter to be asleep on the couch, but instead she heard the faint clatter of dishes in the kitchen. He was standing at the stove, a saucepan simmering on the burner, the air scented with garlic and herbs. "Thought I'd have dinner ready for you," Walter said, turning with a smile. "But you're home early." She set her bag down and managed a weak laugh. "Got fired." His smile faded instantly. "What happened?" "Daniel Merrick happened," she said flatly. "He's the owner. He wanted something from me I wasn't willing to give, so he made up an excuse to get rid of me." Walter's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, something sharp passed through his expression, something she hadn't seen before. "Merrick," he repeated slowly, as if tasting the name. He set the spoon down on the counter. "Tall guy? Brown hair? Favors expensive suits?" Claire blinked. "You know him." Walter's gaze drifted to the window, his brow furrowing. "I don't know, maybe. I can't see it clear yet, but there's something. That name, it's like it's sitting right at the edge of my mind." He pressed his fingertips to his temple, wincing slightly. Claire felt a pang of worry. "You should sit down," she said, guiding him to the table. "It's probably just the memory stuff you told me about." Walter nodded, but his eyes were far away. "If I'm right, that man's no stranger to me. And if I'm remembering the right things, you're not the first person he's hurt." Claire woke to the sound of rain tapping against the window. It was her first morning without work in months. And instead of the luxury of sleeping in, she felt a leaden weight in her stomach. Her rent was due in 2 weeks. There was no severance, no savings, just a stack of unopened utility bills on the counter. She found Walter at the small kitchen table, his coffee cooling beside him, a notebook open in front of him. He was sketching, not pictures, but words, phrases, names, dates. Some were scratched out, others circled. "You're up early," she said, pouring herself a mug. He glanced up, looking both focused and distracted at once. "Couldn't sleep. I remembered something else." She sat across from him. "About Daniel?" Walter tapped his pen against the page. "Not just him. About a house. A big white colonial on Ashwood Drive. There was a workshop out back and I built things there. Furniture mostly. Then one day I came home and the locks were changed. Claire frowned. That's awful. Why? He gave a humorless laugh. Because I was no longer the owner. The bank said my signature was on papers I never signed. And the man who arranged the deal, his name was Daniel Merrick. Claire's chest tightened. So he's been doing this for years. Walter nodded. He had a business front, real estate development, but underneath it was just predatory deals. I think I confronted him once. I remember his office, leather chairs, a decanter of whiskey on the desk, and the look he gave me, like I was already beaten before I'd said a word. She sipped her coffee, trying to fit the pieces together. And you think he remembers you? I don't know. Back then, I had a beard, different hair, but people like him, they don't forget whose lives they've wrecked. By the end of the week, Claire had applied for 6 dishwashing jobs and 3 cleaning positions. No calls back. She knew word travelled fast in certain circles, and if Daniel decided she was a problem, restaurants might be avoiding her. The bills loomed larger. She tried to hide her worry, but Walter saw it. One evening, as she sat on the couch with her laptop open to yet another rejection email, he pulled a battered envelope from his jacket pocket. "I've got something," he said, sliding it to her. Inside was a thick stack of cash, 20s and 50s, worn and soft from use. Her eyes widened. "Where did this come from?" "Odd jobs I've done here and there. Salvaging scrap, fixing things for people who pay in cash. Been holding on to it for a time when it mattered." Claire felt her throat tighten. "Walter, I can't." "You can," he said firmly. "Because this isn't charity. You're giving me a roof, food, and a place where I'm not sleeping with one eye open. We're square." She pressed her hands over the envelope, but didn't move it toward herself. "I don't know how to thank you." He gave a small smile. "You can help me finish remembering, and maybe help me do something about it." Later that night, she found him at the kitchen table again, the notebook open, a new page filled. At the top, in heavy letters, was a single line. "Merrick doesn't get away twice." The diner on 5th Street was quiet in the mid-afternoon lull. Just a few regulars nursing coffee. Claire sat in a corner booth with a notebook in front of her, a half-eaten sandwich pushed aside. Across from her sat Marlene, a server from the restaurant where Claire had been fired. Marlene stirred her iced tea with the straw, glancing toward the door before speaking. "I shouldn't even be talking to you. Daniel finds out, he'll make my life hell." "I won't tell him," Claire said. "But I need to know how far his reach goes. He's kept me from finding work. That's not just petty, it's dangerous." Marlene sighed. "Daniel knows people, not just in restaurants. Real estate, finance, even the city council. His brother's on the zoning board, and one of his golfing buddies is head of a credit union. If he wants someone frozen out, he can make it happen without breaking a sweat." Claire wrote quickly, "Does he have anyone unhappy with him?" A humorless laugh escaped Marlene. "Honey, he's got a lot of those. But they're either broke, scared, or both. You don't cross Daniel unless you're ready to burn everything down." Claire tapped her pen against the page. What if I am? Marlene stared at her for a moment, then leaned in. There's a woman, Ellen Chavers. She used to run a catering company. Daniel ruined her. Last I heard, she's out near Fairview, working at a thrift store. If anyone would talk, it's her. That evening, Claire passed the name to Walter. He was sitting on the couch with an old phone. Not a smartphone, but a flip model, scrolling through stored numbers. I think I found him, Walter said. Buddy from the old days. Went by Ridge. We used to do contracting work together. He saw the paperwork when Merrick took my house. Said he kept a copy, just in case. Claire felt a spark of hope. Do you think he still has it? Only one way to find out. Walter flipped the phone shut. I'll go see him tomorrow. The next day, in an office above the restaurant, Daniel Merrick swirled a glass of scotch, staring out at the rain streaking the windows. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You've made enemies before, Danny. One of them's coming back. Daniel's jaw tightened. He set the glass down, scanned the message again, then deleted it. Still, for the rest of the day, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching from just beyond the light. The Fairview thrift store smelled faintly of mothballs and lemon cleaner. Claire walked past a row of winter coats until she spotted a woman behind the counter, stacking paperbacks into a cardboard box. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, streaked with grey, and her sweat. Ellen Chavers? Claire asked softly. The woman glanced up. Her eyes were sharp, despite the weariness in her face. Depends who's asking. My name's Claire. I used to work for Daniel Merrick until he decided I was disposable. Ellen's mouth twisted into something between a smile and a grimace. Then you're already halfway to the cliff he likes to push people off. Claire stepped closer. I'm not here for pity. I'm here for truth. Walter, a man he swindled years ago, says you might have something that could help. Ellen's expression changed at the name. Tall guy? Built his own workshop? Yeah, I remember. He came to me for catering once, before everything went bad. I want to make sure it goes bad for Daniel instead, Claire said. Ellen leaned on the counter. I had contracts, invoices, even a recording of him promising me a payment he never made. I sent it all to my lawyer, who, funny enough, now works for him. So if you're looking for smoking guns, you'll be digging in cold ashes. Claire felt her resolve falter. So there's nothing left? Ellen's eyes narrowed. I didn't say that. I keep one box of the important things at home, not because I thought I'd get justice, but because I wanted proof I wasn't crazy. She slid a scrap of paper toward Claire. My address. Come by tonight. While Claire was speaking with Ellen, Walter was riding in the passenger seat of a rusty Ford pickup. Ridge was older now. Wiry frame, oil-stained hands, cigarette tucked into the corner of his mouth. But he still had the same watchful eyes. You sure you want to stir this up? Ridge asked, taking a turn down a gravel road. Merrick's not the kind of man you tangle with, unless you've already made peace with losing. Walter stared out at the bare winter trees. He took my home, my work, 10 years of my life. I've already lost. Ridge grunted. Fair enough. They pulled up to a corrugated metal shed. Inside, Ridge rummaged through shelves until he dragged out an old lockbox. From it, He produced a thin folder, yellowed, the edges curling. Walter opened it. The first page bore the letterhead of a mortgage company and a signature that wasn't his own. "That's it," Ridge said. "Forgery, plain as day. I made a copy back then because, well, you never know when a snake's gonna shed his skin and come slithering back." Walter held the papers like they were fragile glass. "You just gave me a weapon." Back in his office, Daniel was pacing. The anonymous text still gnawed at him. He'd ordered his assistant to pull the list of every property dispute from the past 15 years. And now the names were spread across his desk. One caught his eye: Walter Lorne. He hadn't thought of him in years, but the memory came back sharp. The confrontation, the anger in the man's voice, the promise that he'd see justice. Daniel smiled faintly. If Walter was still alive, he'd be nothing but a shadow of the man he once was. But shadows, Daniel knew, could be dangerous in the right light. Ellen's house sat on the edge of Fairview, tucked behind a windbreak of pines. Claire parked on the narrow dirt driveway just after sunset, her headlights slicing through the branches. Walter was already there, leaning against his old sedan, folder in hand. "You got it?" Claire asked. Walter tapped the folder. Proof of forgery. "What about you?" She held up the scrap of paper Ellen had given her. "She says she's got something too." Inside, the place was small but warm. Mismatched furniture, the faint scent of cinnamon and wood smoke. Ellen brought out a cardboard file box from under her bed and set it on the kitchen table. "These are copies," she said, flipping the lid. "Invoices, letters, and this." She pulled out a small USB drive on a keychain. Audio from a phone call with Daniel. He promised me payment for a job he'd already defaulted on. He admitted to delaying it until the zoning people came through. That's bribery territory. Walter's brows rose. "That could open the door to more than just your case." Ellen shrugged. "Doesn't matter if you can't prove the rest. Merrick's got people in every corner." Claire's voice was steady. "Then we'll go around the corners." Across town, in a black SUV parked near Ellen's street, a man sat with a camera and a long lens. He took photos as Claire's car pulled in. Then again, when Walter left half an hour later. He sent the images to a contact labelled DM with a short caption: "They're meeting your ghosts." Daniel looked at the photos on his phone while sitting in his private booth at the restaurant. His scotch remained untouched. "Walter Lorne," he murmured. And someone new. Persistent little pests. The man across the table, a broad-shouldered figure in a charcoal suit, said nothing, waiting for orders. "Don't touch them yet," Daniel said. "But watch. If they start moving toward anything useful, I want to know before they know themselves." As Walter drove home that night, a set of headlights appeared in his rearview mirror. At first, he thought nothing of it. Rural roads always had someone headed the same way. But the car stayed 2 lengths behind him through every turn, every stretch. When he pulled into his driveway, the headlights slowed, then kept going, disappearing into the dark. Walter stood on his porch for a long time before going inside, gripping the folder tighter than before. Claire had chosen the diner because it was loud enough for privacy, but small enough that nobody would blend in without her noticing. She sat in a corner booth, nursing a mug of coffee, until Walter walked in with the folder tucked under his arm. Ellen followed a minute later, her coat collar up, scanning the room. The man they were meeting, retired county investigator Sam Drew, arrived last. He was thick around the middle, with a face that had seen too many crime scenes and too much small-town politics. "You're saying you've got a forgery, a recording, and 3 witnesses?" Sam asked after they laid out the pieces. His voice stayed low, but his eyes kept drifting toward the front windows. "That's a lot of firewood for one match." "Then light it," Walter said. Sam sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I can take it to the state prosecutor, but that office isn't clean either. If Merrick's got someone in there, and I bet he does, your evidence won't last a day." Claire leaned forward. "So who can we trust?" Sam hesitated. "I've got one contact who owes me, but she's in the capital. You'll have to take it to her yourself, and you'll have to be quick. The second Merrick hears about this, you'll have tails on you." Ellen shook her head. "We already do." Outside, in the parking lot, a man in a battered baseball cap sat behind the wheel of a rust-coloured sedan, snapping photos through his side mirror. A police scanner crackled in his passenger seat, tuned to local frequencies. He spoke into a prepaid phone. "They're meeting Drew," he said. "Looks like they're taking it upstate." That night, Daniel was in his study when the call came in. "Good," he told the caller. "If they head for the capital, I want someone waiting before they get there. Not to stop them, not yet. Just make sure they understand they're being followed." He ended the call and poured himself a drink. The amber liquid caught the lamplight, the glass warm in his hand. There was a part of him that almost admired their persistence. Almost. Walter's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Nice folder. Careful you don't lose it on the road." He showed it to Claire. Her face tightened. "We move tonight," she said, "before they close the net." Rain slicked the highway, the streetlights blurring into streaks of white and gold, as Claire's old sedan ate up the miles toward the capital. Walter sat in the passenger seat, the folder on his lap, wrapped in a plastic grocery bag. Ellen was in the back, her eyes darting to the side mirrors every few seconds. "They're still back there," she said. Claire didn't need to look. The black SUV had been with them since they left the diner. Sometimes close, sometimes hanging 2 cars back, but never gone. "We keep going," she said, her knuckles white on the wheel. "If we stop, we lose." 30 miles out, the SUV pulled alongside them, its tinted window rolling down, just enough for the driver to glance their way. Walter tensed, his hand inching toward the glove compartment. But the SUV didn't crowd them. Instead, it dropped back, then surged forward, vanishing into the wet night. "That's not right," Ellen murmured. They hit the city limits at 2:17 a.m. The streets nearly empty. Sam's contact, a woman named Patricia Vance, was waiting in a dimly lit parking garage under a state office building. She was tall, sharp-featured, wearing a trench coat that somehow made her seem even taller. "Get in," Patricia said without preamble, holding the rear door of her car open. Walter slid in beside her, clutching the folder. "You have no idea how close you are to losing this. Merrick's people have someone in our building. I'll keep this off the official record until I can get it to a judge I trust." "And us?" Claire asked. Patricia's gaze flicked to her. "Disappear for a week. No calls, no cards, no credit. If he can't find you, he'll turn his attention somewhere else. But if you stay in sight. She left the sentence unfinished. As they pulled away in Patricia's car, Claire watched the SUV from earlier glide past the entrance of the garage. Slow, then continue on. She couldn't tell if it was a retreat or a promise. 2 weeks later, Daniel Merrick sat at the bar of his own restaurant, swirling a glass of scotch. A news report played on the mounted TV. State officials have opened a formal investigation into allegations of forgery, bribery, and fraud involving local businessman Daniel Merrick. His jaw tightened. He took a slow sip, eyes cold. Then he smiled, faint but real. The game, he knew, wasn't over. It was only moving to a bigger board. Claire and Walter met again in a small coffee shop far from town. Neither spoke about what had happened. They didn't need to. The folder was gone, but the story had taken root where Daniel couldn't easily pull it up. For now, that was enough. If you like the story, I would be very happy to have your support. Click the thumbs up. And to not miss new stories, subscribe and click on the bell. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and all the best.